Cool. In that case, I guess let's get started. Rahul, firstly, thank you so much for joining us. And good morning, good evening, good night to everyone who's joining us from across the South Asian region or wherever you're located. If you're joining us, you've probably been watching Rahul's our featured documentary this month for Screen South Asia. It's called Machines, and it's an immersive look into the lives of workers in a textile factory. We'll be getting a little bit more into the film in a little bit. But firstly, I just wanted to ask everyone if you could please make sure you remain muted just so that we can ensure clear audio. And also, just wanted to ask you to please support our work. Please go to himalmag.com and follow our articles, podcasts, and we do this monthly documentary screening every month. So please do sign in and support us. And without further ado, I'll just read Rahul's bio. Rahul Jain is a Delhi-based filmmaker. He studied film and video and aesthetics and politics at the California Institute of the Arts. His debut feature, Machines, is a portrait of life inside a textile factory. It premiered at Sundance and won the Special Jury Award for Cinematography. His second feature, Invisible Demons, released in 2021, premiered at the Cannes Film Festival and captured the lived experience of Delhi's climate crisis. His new short fiction film, The Boy and the Bite, continues his search for forms that hold together tenderness and violence, grief and beauty. Jane's practice is deeply shaped by questions of memory and trauma, and by the possibility of transformation in the face of ecological and personal loss. He's currently developing a non-fictional film about consciousness and a narrative feature about food and forests. His work has been shown at film festivals worldwide and has received more than 50 international awards. Thank you so much for joining us, Rahul, and we're glad to have you here. And I'll now hand over to Lydia, who will ask you some questions. And to the rest of the audience, please feel free to ask any questions in the chat as well.
Yes. Thank you, Raisa. All right, so talking about the origins of the project, what drew you, rather simply, to explore this dimension of Indian labor?
Right. I'm gonna close my eyes when I think. I come from a family where I grew up in the owner's class in a way, and my maternal grandfather used to own a very similar factory to the kind that is filmed in Machines, and he used to live right above the factory. And as a child, like a very young kindergartner, I used to get to roam around this factory as if it was like a kind of a backyard of mine, and I was warned not to do it, and that kind of made it more fun. And I think that was the first encounter I had um, with this question of why do they have to work and work like this? Or, well, I didn't really know about the negative and positive connotations back then, but it was definitely not very pleasant even to be there as a willing observer and a participant but I was very entranced by the machines and the people interacting with them and the sensorial sights, sounds and the smells and the textures. Um, that was the first thing, but of course that kind of convalesced into when that was mixed with studying and educating and reading about the world and living also or growing up in a society like New Delhi's, where the class equation is extremely imbalanced. Um, I think it just felt like the right film to make in film school, to try to answer the questions that nobody would for me, because um, whenever I asked my family about this kind of disparity, they would just bring up religious and what they called spiritual edicts. And um, I just think that I wasn't buying it from a very young age, and this not buying it led me to question certain things that for me were quite fundamental. Um, I think I also got in touch with a professor of mine in school who really did kind of turn me on to this awareness that how you're feeling is completely legitimate, and your way of questioning the world is completely all right. It's not, you're not being naive or dreamy or romantic about idealism of any kind. This is you're questioning these things in a very normal way, and that coupled with, I think, coming across the book Workers by Sebastião Salgado, um, which also really opened up this aesthetic dimension of how to make sense or find beauty in this um, terror that I perceived from a distance, albeit.
I see. Well, it's a pretty remarkable film school project. I'm curious, how did you receive and kind of maintain access to your interviewees in this setting? And did you encounter any challenges as you were filming it?
In the beginning, people in the factory were a bit confused from the sense of what is wrong with this guy? Doesn't he have anything better to do? Why is he filming us? They were just perturbed and confused by my gaze. But um, it, I did have access there because of family connections. It wasn't my family's factory, but which is kind of some rumor going online. Of course, it makes a very nice story or narrative to say that this is a factory that I own or come from the ownership of. But um, I was able to go there because of my family's connections. But so people knew this from the very beginning. Um, the owners were not afraid at all about my chain of curiosities, because from their perspective, they repeated many times that, there are like 2 million workers in this region of 10 kilometers square, and there are thousands of these factories. We're not doing anything wrong. Like, we're just giving people jobs. And how many factories do you think your little movie is going to get shut? So ask away whatever you want to ask and don't shy, so that you kind of learn the rules of life, and you realize that we're not such monsters as you might be judging us to be. And the workers there, they eventually, like, I spent a lot of time there without a camera. And when I did put my camera on, I realized that the best thing would be to be completely vulnerable and tell them about my background and what I'm doing there. Of course, it had its limitations in many ways, because one of the most poignant but scary moments for me was when one of the workers asked me, "How much is that camera worth?" And I could not really respond by saying, "Oh yeah, that's $25,000," um, because not that I felt that I would be robbed, but it just felt completely banal and vain to be there with a device that probably a kind of money these people will maybe see in a decade, um, and playing with it. But I literally was there in a sense of play. That's what I began with. But I eventually started telling them everything about my background, what I just told you, and that back then in my early 20s that I had never had a job in my life, and I'm trying to figure out what is it that brings people to work there in these conditions. And once I opened up like that, they kind of just thought that, okay, well, I'm a harmless observer.
Okay.
But on the
You,
other hand, when I started filming women, they were very uncomfortable. It took me 3 or 4 days to realize that the women were not very happy with my camera's gaze on them. And that's why I kind of like withdrew and I didn't film them anymore. Neither did I put them on the film, even though I was trying to aestheticize many parts of their presence in the factory. And I've been given a lot of shit for this. over the years for excluding the women out of this, but it was done out of this reason that they were not comfortable with my camera. And I had a power to just put it wherever I wanted to, but then to just kind of take the moral stance that, okay, well, if they were not happy with my gaze, I'm not gonna show them.
Of course. Well, from a different social cleavage, you do feature some younger looking boys working in a factory. Was it, how, were you aware of how pervasive kind of that age gap was in the factories? Was that new to you as you filmed it?
No, I mean, in India, it is a fairly, I would say, 15 years before, even more so, fairly common sight to encounter um, underage children working, but then to see them work in such hellish conditions, I think it gave it a completely different equation, and this sense of pride or confusion, and being able to peel those layers of the onion to understand the psyche and actually like not confront, but um, stir up a conversation about how do you feel about this in a real eye-to-eye discourse. That I mean, none of it ever made me accept that, oh, okay, now I get why this child is here, but it it essentially made it um, I could put some body to the logic of why this person would be here, but
Mhm.
not like it, not really accept it. Just
I see.
but
Um,
but the not the disparity, but the bracket of age was quite wide, and there were people that had been there for 30 years. There were people in their 60s, even touching 70s there. So it was
wow,
quite a wide gamut.
I see. In one of the interviews with the workers, they talk about how the work that they do involves both muscle and brain. What do you think about that statement and what it says about perceptions around laborers in a textile factory like this one?
Um, for me, that statement amounted to a kind of pride, a kind of a sense of dignity, and it also forced me to reorient my own gaze or perspective that from a distance it might look um, demeaning work to some degree or dehumanizing work, but then when this guy so much with pride talks about how what different kinds of labor he is able to produce or enact, including intellectual or physical or calculative, that did affect me in a it evoked this sense of ownership over his time and also that he was able to exert some personality and influence over the kind of work that he does in his own style.
You end up moving up the hierarchy to conduct interviews with labor leaders and management of the factory. Um, what was your biggest surprise as you learned about their beliefs and motivations? You would kind of touch on this a little earlier, but we can expand.
Excuse me. I mean, speaking with them was always the most shocking thing, either the contractors or the boss, and to understand this kind of logic that they built for themselves of complete, total, absolute, utter impunity. Um, and I did have a conversation with a professor of psychology when I was going to school to understand how can people be like this on either side? Why do people accept things or why do people make reasons to accept things? They just make these stories up. And he used the words from Freud psychology, I think, called reality principle. And he said that that's a concept where you basically tell yourself everything you need to make sense of your world, without which narrative detail things would start falling apart. So you would the bosses tell themselves what they need to feel good, and the workers do the same. But of course, it's the workers that are completely in a position of being abused and manipulated and degraded.
So, kind of moving over to the visual side of things and how these interviews informed how you structured the film, one of the most unique aspects is its stark and industrial visuals. What was the collaboration process like with your cinematographer, Rodrigo Trejo Villanueva? And did any of the interviews inform what you chose to capture when people weren't being interviewed, or did the structuring mainly happen in the editing room?
There was literally no sense of structure when we were shooting. It was completely darts in the dark. It was built solely from my curiosities and visual pleasure of the camera, of image making, of composition. Of course, it was guided by both of us reading anything by Marx that we could find every night when we were resting in our rooms. But then every morning when we were working, we were just chasing how to make beautiful images. And I was a bit frenetic for a long time, thinking, oh, I need to capture everything. Let's not spend too much time here. And I was restless, and also, in one way, I was extractive with the camera. I was feeling, oh, we're gonna miss this, we're gonna miss this. But Rodrigo was like, dude, you need to calm down. You are here from the owner's class. You have total permission. You can do whatever you want. Treat it like your own factory. Nobody's gonna stop you. Just do whatever you want. You're here for something you really believe in. Let me fucking make my images. Let me compose. Let me take my time. You go and find other things you're curious about, but don't disturb me while I'm composing, and give me my own space. And I'm really glad he did that. I'm really glad that we had this relationship where he could ask me to calm down and just back off and let him perform.
Mhm.
And he really did stimulate me to be my most playful and creative, and which is more like this sense of questioning. Do you think we could do this? Do you think we could do this? Oh, wow. Okay. I did not know that was possible. Wow. All right. I mean, he would almost say yes to everything. And
Mhm.
it was always a question of me proposing angles or perspectives or movements or um, styles or lighting. And um, I feel very grateful for that. I feel very grateful for that kind of relationship. It's still something that I seek in my creative collaborations.
I see. The documentary is punctuated by the rhythm of the machines, not only through the images you capture, but the sound pulsing in the background. What role would you say that this rhythm played, and what message were you trying to get across? Was it about monotony, or rather about this kind of dance being performed by the workers who were all collaborating in that same sense?
Um, when you walk through different sections of the factory, there are blockages or architecturally it's extremely shoddy and ramshackle, but at the same time, um, you cross one wall and you enter a completely different section. But so you might not see things, but you can hear the sound travels and it blends and fuses and merges into each other. So um, in from this Marxist perspective, all the different sections are hidden from each other so that people don't become friends or they're only focused on what they do. Um, but um, but the sound still bled into the different parts. And so when I got the sound designer Sushmit Bob Nath, who was just working with me on a new film, and he still reminisces working on this film because he immediately understood how I was feeling about this blending of sound between different places. And I asked him to create this complete, absolute, and total immersion in the factory and how it feels to walk from one place to another without breaking it, without cutting it. And this bleeding feeling of everything just merging into the other, it felt like a really chaotic and painful psychedelic trip, a bad psychedelic trip that wouldn't end. And so I was just trying to create a feeling of being there more than being didactic about or dogmatic about one particular thing. For me, the dogma was more about recreating how it felt to be there more than anything else.
Mm. I think that really comes through. We have a question from Shalini. Did it surprise you that some of the tools used were really basic in the sense that small changes could either make labor unnecessary, for example, when two people held fabric falling into the big baskets, or make labor more productive, like using a trolley to push large barrels around rather than workers pulling them using lots of energy?
Oh yeah, absolutely. This was 12 years ago, and people there, the owners, the management, they have this quite, I would say, I don't know how to, I don't want to call it evil, but they have this extremely extractive view of human labor where um, there is no point of spending any money on any kind of automation or using machines to make people's lives easier because in their minds, these are stupid people who will ruin any tools that they will be given, and that's why they deserve to have nothing and make do with what they're given. Um, I think interface wise, it was a really, really bad design, and um, I think a lot of people were having accidents there. There were at least like 3 to 5 accidents in a year that were like um, close to fatal each time, and real serious bodily injury, permanent bodily injuries were happening, but also a lot of time was being wasted. And even the carts that you were watching, let's say even their wheels were not greased, because that was more about, I mean, if a proper industrial engineer would go there, they would find hundreds of faults to make it more efficient. But I don't know why exactly. Their bigger concerns was just economic output. It wasn't making the lives of people there easier, clearly.
I see. The individual, certainly, we've discussed, and I want to talk, kind of broaden it to the industry and the implications of the industry on your other interests, which include environmentalism. You went on to make another documentary, Invisible Demons, which is about air pollution in Delhi. Certainly, there's pollution born from the textile industry. How did the making of this film inform the environmentalist concern you would later demonstrate in your later body of work?
It's a very difficult question to answer, but I did find one answer in a book by Andreas Malm. He said the book was called How to Blow Up a Pipeline, and he says that only a species that treats its environment in this manner also treats its own kind in this manner. So I think that both are just attempts at my brand of empathy opening up to um, I think it's actually a response to being a subject of capitalism more than anything else, either machines or invisible demons. I see both as unbridled examples of what happens when you take away all systemic regulations to have the well-being of people in a globalized machinery of consumption and uh, ascribing values, a monetary value to the cost of life. This is the reason why I think we are going through like the sixth extinction right now. But I think aesthetically speaking, it would be very difficult for me to find parallels between the two. Besides like this free-flowing nature or non well, it's not really, it's post-structuralism in a way, because you're finding the structure with what you have and not with what you intended originally. But the only original intention would be a kind of free-floating nebulousness of sorts, where you're creating a feeling of something by a diffraction pattern of it.
Mm. As you reflect on machines 10 years on, what are you most proud of? And what do you think people should take away from this screening in 2025?
It's very hard for me to say what I'm most proud of. It feels so far away. When I see the film, I recently showed the film at a business school, and with a bunch of young MBA graduates. And I was just thinking to myself how I would possibly not be able to make that film today from my own perspective and my own limits physically and excuse me, emotionally. Um, um, I think in 10 years' time, it's gotten really worse. Um, and um, um, I um, I don't know, like I recently was in the same town last week itself for the first time in a very long time, where I shot the film, and I realized that things have become more systematized, um, and workers have a little bit more agency. But again, there's this feeling of uh, coming there as the last resort. It's the same place in India where during 2020, when the first wave of lockdowns happened, um, the factory owners convinced the government to stop the trains from leaving so the workers couldn't leave the factories, so that they would be trapped there. Um, and I think the people there still have this kind of sense of ownership over people, and that really fucks with me. I don't know like what to do about it. I mean, in terms of my own creative capital that I've accrued from this film, it definitely created a interesting start to a career in this profession of filmmaking. Don't feel any particular guilt about surviving this or something, but I was always there with privilege. And when I once asked my professor before going to shoot, like, Tom, do you think it would be smart that I work there for a month before I start filming? And he just responded in front of the whole class by saying, "Don't be an idiot, Rahul. There's always this possibility that you have of choosing. You have this notion of choice with you, which people there don't. So you'll never be able to feel exactly how it is to be there."
Absolutely. A question from Dhruvi. Could you speak a little about the decision to include the scene toward the end where the workers confront the camera and ask how the film will help them? Did such interactions happen often with the workers?
No, no. Thanks for going there. This was a very difficult moment for me, because I knew what would happen, and it was never so that people formed a circle like that, unless like I started asking questions people publicly instead of treating them as an individual. I started communicating with the collective, you know, like looking. So I first forced myself to find a way to create a scene, and I did that by taking the camera outside the factory during the shift change in the morning, at 8 a.m., between 8 a.m. and 9 a.m. When the 12-hour shift was closing, people were coming and going. And when they saw me there, they all made this huge circle. And I basically started channeling the boss. And I said, well, you know, like, that's what you do. You spend your money on tobacco, alcohol, women. And I became this complete, utter asshole. And saying things that I don't believe in, but to provoke them. And I think I was really afraid that they could punch me because it would be deserved, but also at the same time, um, I also knew that they had a sense of my intentions, and um, so uh, um, it when I did that, that's when it really opened up, and when I conf it became this big collective unconscious confrontation, and I was very nervous, but people took it really well. They just kind of wanted me to help them and see like where this would go, and I wasn't ready for it at all. I had no clue that that's what would be happening. And in hindsight, I kind of regret not going to the police station with them and and seeing what happens. Maybe just for the camera, even if I knew nothing would happen, but it also felt a bit stupid to think something would happen, as if I had some power that these people didn't. And I regret that. I regret like feeling so powerless. On the other hand, many people did come to me as individuals while I was interviewing them, and they asked me all the time to take them with me to Delhi. They were like, "We'll do anything, just take us from here, give us a job. I'll be such a good assistant to you. You could do anything. I'll be very happy to do whatever you ask me to do. I'll even murder someone for you if you ask me to do it," as a joke. And it was it always put me in these situations where I didn't really know how to respond, and I thought that I was kind of doing my part, but I didn't know
Mm,
how much agency I had over the life of the other person there.
let's see. In totality, how long did you spend on the shoot in this factory?
I think it was a total period of shooting of 6 months over 3 years.
Okay. Do you remain in contact with anyone from the factory?
Unfortunately, no, I don't. My phone numbers changed a lot, and I think we fell out of touch.
Moving forward, you're working on both a nonfiction and a fiction project currently. What should viewers know about these films, and do you have any sort of uh, release dates in mind, or just general information about them you'd like to share?
Um, I just made my first fiction, a short film called The Boy and the Bite, and it's been an extremely taxing process, and I'm really happy with it. But I was really nervous making it, and I wrote that in film school before I started making machines. So it really feels like having covered a very long trajectory in a circle to finish it up. Um, I'm happy with how the film has turned out, but it was a very painful process of creating it, and I'm just happy for it to come out into the world now. We're awaiting a few different festivals, um, and I don't know what I will do with the film after its festival run, but I hope that it goes into some kind of a platform. Um, then there are two feature films, one fiction, one non-fiction, and I'm here in Karnataka right now to just expand my view for the fiction, which is about food and soil and trauma and epigenetics.
Mm.
Um, um, I'm really nervous about viewing habits today and what it means to be a storyteller or a filmmaker, and who am I speaking to? Because till now I've kind of gotten away with only thinking of the audience as myself. I've never had a sense of audience till now, and I always found the fuel and the resources to delude myself into, being an artist only for myself. And I think the more that I expand my horizons in my craft and profession, I need to kind of grapple with the fact that film is a very populist medium, and I need to kind of be speaking to a broad range of masses. And I, yeah, I'm trying to figure this out. But the other nonfiction idea, it's something that I also wanted to do as a younger person. I wanted to make a film about consciousness or the soul, um, and trying to understand from different perspectives what that means. Um, and I find it deeply intriguing and but yeah, it's very ephemeral and difficult to grasp. Yeah.
Okay. I know you mentioned the book Workers by Sebastian Salgado and How to Blow Up a Pipeline. Are there any other key texts or films that you would say are very relevant to labor in India? Something that would tie in well to a screening of this documentary that you'd like to recommend?
Um, to be honest, I usually have no references when I make work. Um, it makes the journey very lonely, but it forces me to really mine and excavate within my own self to figure out why I'm drawn to something. Um, I don't have a sense of contemporaries. I'm sure they exist. It's just that I haven't come across. Um, um,
Could be non-contemporaries as well, people from history who have made an impact on how you craft your work.
Interesting. I don't see it, but some people compare it to Edward Bertinsky, the Canadian photographer. Um, and I was inspired by Michael Glauber from Austria. I was also inspired by Harvard's sensory ethnography lab. Um, uh, yeah, um, I'm happy to hear whatever you guys think it reminds you of.
Mhm.
Um, I find Amitav Ghosh very inspiring. For the Nutmeg's Curse, or The Great Derangement are two books that I really loved in his non-fictions. They were quite like uh, um, how would I put it, paradigm shifting for me.
Mhm.
Really like opened up a lot of my questions as a child and brought them to the foreground. I of course, I'm always like learning new things and reading new thinkers and people, but yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, thank you. I hope that proves inspiring, perhaps for any aspiring filmmakers who may be watching today. Um, you have a few nice comments in the chat as well.
Okay.
Shalini says, I think the movie is really relevant in these times when informalization in textile industry has continued to grow, especially since COVID, and with it, the exploitation of labor. Drovi compares it to Homebound, which is also partially set in a textile mill. And Shalini says the film should be mandatory viewing for all
Right.
labor department government
I had no
functionaries.
idea. I should go watch it. Wow, good to know. Thank you. I would be very grateful if you all got to see Invisible Demons as well. Machines is, of course, my first film, and I hold it dearly, but Invisible Demons is a very strong experience that I built. Um, which for me came from the death of nature in Delhi.
Yes. I believe that's able to stream on Mubi. Thanks to everyone who attended. We really appreciate you. Please subscribe to Screen South Asia, and you will get more great documentaries from around the region, including a Nepali documentary next month. So stay tuned, and please continue to support Himal.